for coming and um, to do just a kind of a quick overview and kind of contextualizing, just because some people haven't been here for the other couple of talks we've done, and just kind of remind us all kind of what the framework is of some of the talks we've been doing. So this is the third, and then we're going to have our guests come up. And also, did you all get your raffle tickets? Everybody, we got special prizes at the end. That's, we haven't done that before. So this is and we have our virtual audience, big virtual audience, I think, because of the weather. We've got, I think, as many people online as we do here in the audience. So, but they're missing out. It's not the same as being in the midst of people. So
Fire.
yeah, and they're missing the fire and the warmth from it. Yeah. So this is the third in a short series of talks we've been doing about downsizing. And, this euphemism of downsizing is a tough one because it really doesn't quite capture it. It's almost like we need like a German word like Schadenfreude. Everybody know that word. Some other languages have these words that sort of capture a particular kind of a feeling or state of being that we just don't have words for. So, and downsizing is, for some people, downsizing means, getting rid of the boxes in the garage. For other people, it means moving to assisted living. It can be a huge, wide spread of things, and we don't have a good word for it. So we're using it tonight for lack of a better word. And we'll kind of have to keep struggling through that until we get a good word. Somebody's got to invent it. And I would think with about 10,000 people a day that are turning 65 in the country, and that's been happening for quite a while, since 2012. And it's going to continue happening until 2029. Every day, another 10,000 people turning 65. And so I would imagine with all that humanity kind of massing on this other end of 65, that we'll be able to invent some reasonable terms to call this. So we kind of know what we're all talking about. But we started out with a kind of a premise in the beginning. I know this isn't probably big enough, but it helps me kind of keep my train. We're starting with this concept of home. And for us, that's what it's about. But if you think about it, home is the center place of our lives, and in two ways. It's our largest asset, and it's also the place. It's what we mean by home. It's the centering place. It's where we derive privacy and comfort and safety and retreat and all those things that those qualities of life kind of revolve around home. So when we're talking about homes, why do homes sell, or why do people sell or buy homes? It's usually, almost always, because they're going through some large life transition. So all the biggies, they're getting married, they're having kids, they're having more kids, they're getting a job transfer, they're getting a divorce, all the big transitions of life that you can, anybody can think of. Usually they're accompanied by a transition in homes. So you can't really separate out home from the life transition. The driver is the life transition. Everything else about the home is a subset of the larger transition. And when you're talking about your largest asset and that internal place that we think of as our refuge, those are some big buttons to push. That contains a lot of emotional baggage that comes with it. So it's a tough thing to wrestle with some of these questions about downsizing, because everywhere you turn, when you're considering the questions and the opportunities, it touches those emotional buttons, and we've got to sort of work with that and try and resolve it. And the particular downsizing transition that we're in at the moment is what our millennial friends like to. Well, we have a couple in the room, but they're not like that. That's the other millennials. So I'm imagining that most people in the room are between 65 and 80 or somewhere in there, right? So we're all part of the same generation, right? And so here we are. And this interesting thing about this being in this downsizing age is that we're on the cusp between the first 2/3 of our lives and the last third of our lives. So when we're looking at the future, we're really thinking and talking about what do we want the last third of our life to be? How are we going to write the story of that last act? And all of these things come when we're wrestling with it. We're trying to figure out the story of what we want it to be. And so when we come to this cusp between first 2/3 and last 2/3, we're looking at this really confusing thing where we just spent the first 65 years of our lives getting everything in our lives was getting bigger. We're growing, we're creating a nest egg, our families were getting bigger, our houses were getting bigger, and suddenly we're not getting bigger anymore. We're getting smaller. And our bodies are shrinking, our jobs are shrinking, our roles in the culture may be shrinking. Lots of things that we used to do we can't do anymore. So that's a tough thing to wrap your head around. Is how do we go from expansion to the last third of our lives when we're contracting? And that's hard. That's hard. So in a way, all of these things we've been talking about for 3 weeks is about that, is about getting used to somehow being able to adjust to that last third where where things are getting smaller. And how do we look at it not as detrimental, not as diminishment, but as opportunity? Maybe that means we're lighter, we have less responsibilities, we have more freedom to do the things we want. We're less tethered to the old roles that we had, to the job we had for 40 years and have retired from. So it's challenging. So what do we need? We need some sort of map, because there is no map. I was watching something last night. In 1950, right around when I was born, the average age of a woman in America was 70 years old, and the average lifetime span. And for men, it was even less. So we're kind of all past that now, and we got a long road ahead of us, and that's great. But we haven't had, the culture isn't prepared for it. There's no systems, there's no order, there's no map, there's no direction. So I think that we need to kind of figure out and come up with our own map. Everyone's unique, we're all different, but there are some similarities in terms of the paths. And so one way to think about it is how do we define a map for our futures? That's true, that resonates with us, who we are and what we want. And sort of along the lines of home being sort of the largest asset, and then that sort of centering place or where our quality of life resides. One good way to think about it is we're looking first for a compass direction, thanks to Bernard. We want to, which direction are we going? North, south, east, or west? Just getting a general, direction we want to go. And then when we have that, it's partly about starting to put together the jigsaw puzzles pieces, because all of these things are pieces of the puzzle, and we're trying to put those pieces together into something that resembles a map. And a couple of ways to think about the pieces are there's asset-based or pragmatic pieces, and then there's quality of life pieces. And we talked, for instance, last week about capital gains tax in Prop 19. we need to delve into those things and sort of research them and know what they are. And then we've got those pieces together that we can then put into our map when we assemble it. So tonight, we're going to talk about probably one of the biggest pieces, because it's certainly, from having worked with so many people going through the downsize transition, the stuff is hard. It's of everything we do to help people prepare, the hardest part is dealing with the stuff. It always is. There's almost no exceptions. And so it becomes a little bit of a well, we join the wrestling match. We try and help people deal with their stuff, but it can be a challenging process for them and for us. So what we've got tonight are 4 people that kind of do this all the time. They work with people in a variety of capacities and in ways that deal with stuff. So packing, organizing, decluttering, storing, selling, all those things that we all think about. What our favorite things. Well, we've got all that stuff in the garage. Maybe I can fix it. Right? Yeah, of course. I parts for that thing from 30 years ago, right? I paid a lot of money for it. Okay, well, does that really mean anything? I can't just give it away. Why not? I want it to go to a good home. Well, how do we find that person? Right? It's worth a lot of money. Well, not if somebody doesn't want to pay it. It's not. Same with your home. Let's have an estate sale. It's not quite so easy. Yes, Claire was laughing. I'll rent a storage unit. Okay, yeah, we can do that. Craigslist, eBay. Oh, that's a nightmare. You could drag it to the street and put a free sign on it. That works with limited stuff. Your neighbors might not like it very much. What if I need it someday? That's what we all say. That's what we all say, from the level 1 hoarder to the level 5 hoarder. What if I need it someday? That not every one of us says that. So what's that about? Maybe the buyer will want it. The buyer almost never wants it. Can you give it to your kids? No, your kids don't want it in most cases. So these questions come up all the time. I'm sure you recognize them. You've all thought about them. Maybe you're struggling with it. Maybe you struggle with your own parents' stuff. Maybe when they passed, you were the responsible one, and that's hard. And one of the things we all say is, we're not going to put that burden on our kids. So, if there's a limited amount of time, we better figure this out right before we're putting the burden on our kids. So anyway, we've got 4 professional stuff people that work in a variety of capacities. We're, going to have lots of questions and open it up to you to ask questions, and they'll kind of work as a panel and just give you their opinions and their perspectives. They're not all the same. They're sometimes different, but it's meant to be a resource for you and to share tips, or if you're stuck in a particular way, now's a great time to ask. By the way, one of the things I've always observed is our generation doesn't like to ask for help. It's hard to accept help. There's a sense of somehow there's judgment around that. So at least for tonight, try and suspend that worry about there being judgment or the fear of asking for help, because it's something that we're all going to have to get used to over time as we move forward. So anyway, I'm going to introduce Claire Rubach, who owns a business called the Home Weeder, and she's going to come up and tell us a little bit about what she does. And Missy Brigante and Michelle Zavarella and Terry Bresney. And Michelle and Missy own a company called the SOS Company. And I've seen them do some remarkable transformations for people. And Terry, of course, is both a realtor and a professional stager and works with people through these things all the time. Claire comes at it from a little bit different history and perspective. She has a master's degree in social work, and she spent 25 years working in the field of social work. And she has a very mindful, thoughtful approach to what she does. So she'll have a probably different perspective than some of the others. So if you don't mind coming up and.
Where's the music?
Yeah.
And I hope the people on the virtual can hear and see.
We want to share the mic because the
Right,
people in the
yeah.
back can't hear us. We're using the mic.
Do you, why don't you just start by just giving us kind of an idea of what you do, what your specialties are, and just kind of a short description of who you guys are.
First time with a microphone. Hello, I am Missy, and I started the SOS company 9 years ago. I wanted to help people get organized. I just am naturally very good at it and realized I like doing it. And actually, a dear friend of mine suggested I start a business doing it. So that's how that started. Pretty quickly, I realized that people needed help with more than just organizing. So the business evolved, and we do packing and unpacking and home setup and styling and all kinds of little tasks that people just need help with. And we just like doing it. And then about 3.5 years ago, Michelle joined the team, and we've got 2 other employees that aren't here tonight. But so we've got a good team, so we can get a lot done really quickly. And we do it with a lot of compassion and understanding. We realize that your stuff is very sentimental to you. And so we just come at it very gingerly.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I started working with Missy. I was in sort of a professional transition, doing a whole lot of other things. And when I began working with Missy, I realized that I really liked doing what I was doing. So I kind of stayed. The transition ended there. And so I learned a lot from Missy. And what we realized is it's amazing how much what we do naturally is so incredibly helpful to other people. So we realize that we might be a little bit of odd birds when we get really excited to clean up your stuff. It's kind of a strange instinct, but it is. We are who we are. So, and so that's who we are. There you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Claire Ruback, and the name of my business is The Home Weeder. So I go into people's homes and businesses and I weed. How I think I'm a little different in terms of my advertising, but probably not in terms of how I work necessarily, is on my website and on my Yelp and everything, people become clear that this is really the next chapter of my social work. As Tom said, I worked in the field professionally for quite a while. And a friend hired me to do this once to give her a hand, and I just loved it. So what I talk to people about on my website and through my advertising is that to come into your home is a very personal thing and a very tender thing and very sensitive. I mean, not everybody is comfortable with that. I know I wouldn't be. And as a social worker, we take an oath of confidentiality. And in this small town, it's very, very important. You know, even if you say, well, I know this lady who lives on the west side and collects goldfish, people are going to put that together. So you have to be very careful about how you talk in the community. But anyways, a lot of people who call me see that I have the social work background and are in situations where there's something big going on, disease, death, loss of a child. And I can go on and on about other things, but I'll hand the mic over to Terry.
It'll come up.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Terry Bresney, and My job mostly is to talk people into hiring these guys. So it's fascinating how people say, I'm really organized, and I'll go out in their garage, compared to what? The challenge is, unless you've seen the after effect of these talented people, it's almost impossible to conceive how organized you can be. And there's energy principles around it, the way they containerize things. It's really magic. And so I sort of start the party with people when they're moving, because it's like Tom said, that's one of the first upheavals is the move. The other thing that people tend to underestimate is the difficulty of putting their home together wherever they're going. So that's one of the things I encourage them to hire a professional to help them, because usually they're tired by this point. We've been torturing them for 6 months getting their house ready. Then they've had the labors of marketing their home and having strangers come in. And then they finally do move, and they're in a sea of boxes. They can barely see the floor in their new place. And it's a very easy place to just crump and say, what was I thinking when I took this on? And that's when they come to the rescue, and it really is incredible. So I encourage you, if that's a belief system that you can do it all yourself, that's marvelous. But why? When there's great people. So Tom, do you want to ask for questions now, or?
Yeah, I'll ask a question just to start. Why do you think it's so hard to get started?
Let's ask the audience.
No.
Does anybody out there have yeah?
Everybody has the intellectual feeling about what it'd be like to be so much lighter. And then they have the feelings like, but I could use that later. And that difference between their feelings and their intellectual desire for what their goals are seems to be critical.
So what he's saying is we have the impulse that wouldn't it be nice if my home was lighter and I had less stuff to worry about? But then what Saturday you wake up and say, today I'm going to go out and organize my garage, And so there's this delta between the desire to be light and the actual impetus to go out there and start. And
Well,
that's
the feelings that block you.
the emotional attachment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could use it. I've got
Right.
it costs money, all the things on
Yeah.
the list.
One of the things is that you have the fear that if you throw away the skis, you're never going to ski. And then you have to come to terms with the fact that skiing is in your past. And so you hang on to the skis as kind of a talisman that you're still youthful, because letting them go is physical evidence that you've packed that bag. And these guys can all share about that. Anybody else have yes? Overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want to talk?
Yeah.
Try to,
Share.
Yeah.
I will. We have way too much stuff. I mean, when we think, I'm going to speak for myself, I think about my parents, I think about my grandparents. Oh, I have a little PowerPoint here. This is what we get now for our Listerine. This is what we would get for our Listerine in the 1910s. Okay. So not only do we have all our gear, but when we try to save money living, we go to the big box stores and we get more than we need because we're saving money and we don't want to go out again and shop, although we do go out and shop all the time. I bet you that I'm going to use more Listerine than I need than if I bought this bottle. But it is daunting. We have way too much stuff. We can't park in our garages. There are more storage lockers than Starbucks and McDonald's combined.
Oh, really?
There's over 48,500 storage locker units in United States of America. I work with many people who have 3 storage lockers. That's not unusual.
That's a whole
It's
subject.
really hard to get going. And it's not only, I might need this, but my daughter played with this. My daughter wore this.
Yeah, so the emotional charge that is like underlying in a lot of the items that you have, it doesn't have to be. You're choosing to place a lot of emphasis on these things. But for people who may have received a gift and they say, well, this was given to me by somebody and it was an important moment in my life. But do you think that that person would have wanted you to feel saddled by that item for the rest of your life? Would have wanted you to feel like you can't move forward with your life because they gave you a set of china or a bocce set or whatever it might be, like think about the fact that you also have to live your life all these years later, now that the intention of that item has served its purpose. So there's those kinds of things where you can actually choose to say, I need to move forward. Anything to add?
They kind of said it all. But yeah, I would agree that a lot of it has to do with emotions. You feel like you're giving up on a project that someday I'm going to do this. And so it's like you're calling defeat. I'm never going to do it. You're throwing away those skis but I really want to do it again. But there is a lot of psychology to it that you're getting to a certain point where, and I think this is what Tom's trying to point out, is that you need to downsize. You've collected all this stuff through your life and now you've hit a plateau, and eventually you're going to want to maybe move into something smaller. So just working at it, chiseling away at it now and letting go of the things that you don't use and that someone else could probably use. It is hard though.
Just a question.
Yeah.
There's more and more research coming out of the connection between memories and stuff. So that the stuff is actually triggering the memory. And if I get rid of the stuff, I'm going to lose that memory. It's not just about the skis. It's about the memory of having had that wonderful ski vacation with my kids.
Yeah.
And as memory care becomes more and more prevalent, right? And we all fear, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose those memories. And the stuff is an anchor to keep my memories there. How do you help kind of transition? Because that's a huge loss for anyone.
I would agree with that. I would agree. We do it gently. Honestly, we talk to our clients a lot while we're working together, and it's really just trying to help them see that, yeah, there's a lot of things that I do tell people to keep. If it has a really fond memory, keep it, but don't keep 50 things that have a very similar fond memory. We just have to help them because the ultimate goal is what they need done. It's not about what I want. I don't want you to get rid of your stuff, but you've asked me to come and help you because you need to downsize because you're going to go to a smaller place or you're moving and you don't want to take all this stuff. So ultimately, I'm just the person that's helping you get over that hump of, yes, you love your stuff, but do you love all of it, or let's just be practical about it in a sense? But there's a ton of emotion to it, and I'm just as guilty. I have things that I have never used, but I'm not getting rid of it. I want it. I want to keep it. Someday I'm going to do it. It's useful. I don't want to throw things away. So I do understand.
I found out like a digital photograph or something that is kind of an image of that item will help prolong that memory.
Maybe address that.
It's easier like, oh,
Did you say if you take a photograph of it?
yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I did that recently with these toys, that the kids used to play with. It's just like, really horrible colors and made in China. And it's like, okay, yes, it was really cute when they're playing in their bikinis in the water with this thing, but this is fine with the picture. There's other things that I want to have and hold till the day I die. But I'm trying to minimize that, like you said. One thing that's been apparent in my years doing this is that it's really an unlayering. Perhaps if I come in and I work with you and we have 3 sessions together, there are going to be things that you think you're never going to be able to let go of. But maybe by the 4th session, or maybe after I'm not even working with you again, you change your mind. It's a process. It's really interesting. And so you morph over time as you do the process. The person you are at the beginning of decluttering is not the same person at the end. And I'd like to tell a story about that later.
Remember your story. I think one of the things, oh, go ahead, question.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I want to hear your question. I'll remember what I'm going to say.
My question is about papers.
Mhm.
So I've collected a lot of pieces of paper, and my dear sister passed away 2 years ago, and she had a lot of paper. And I thought, well, things like a credit card statement to her, where all the accounts have been closed, that could just go right in recycling. And the estate attorney said, people try to set up accounts from people who are dead. Be careful with anything like a bank statement.
Mhm.
And then with things that come to me, I, I do a silly thing. I open the envelope, I tear out my last name, put that in the garbage, crumple it up, and then I recycle everything else, the envelope and the document. And if it's a credit card application, I rip the application, a section of it off so no one could fill it out. And I just recently have started thinking about the idea of shredding. You go to some place like UPS and you take a box and they supposedly shred confidential documents. So what my question is, when I'm taking these pieces of paper and deciding this one goes in recycle, this one should be shredded, which ones go where? And is it completely pointless just to rip off my last name? Is that silly?
That's over my pay grade, because it's sort of a legal thing, and it has a lot to do with how risk averse you are. I mean, Tom's father shredded every little thing. And I'm like you, I tear the applications in half and hope for the best. So they say there's two kinds of people: the people that hang a picture on the wall. One gets out a slide rule and a tape measure and agonizes over it for 3 days, is it in the center of the wall? The other one gets some bubble gum and say, that looks nice, right? So there's a wide spectrum of people and how they approach things. So do you guys have a ready answer for that? or-
I'm just gonna say from my experience with my own parents, my dad, for the last 2 years of his life, had a small shredder next to his chair. He couldn't move very much, but that was his job all day long, was feeding page by page in there. Of course, he had a garage full of there was a legal boxes for every tax year since 1947.
Wow.
So he had legal boxes full of his tax documents from every year since 1947.
Oh my
Back up to so he was, it was kind of like rearranging the chairs on the deck chairs on the Titanic. And I would posit that he was hacked a number of times on his computer and on his phone. I think if we have phones and computers, it seems much more likely that you're going to lose that information through what self-respecting, con artist is going to go through your trash and steal your documents, when they could just much more easily hack your phone and steal all your stuff at the same time.
Oh, yes.
For the two organizing companies that are here, I'm wondering about how you all actually work with people. You find you're in there shoulder to shoulder going through those boxes together, or are you, imparting wisdom to people so that they can do this more successfully on their own, even when you're not there?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, we will.
This gentleman has asked how we actually operate, how we function with the client, whether we stand shoulder to shoulder digging through their stuff, or if we follow instructions that we've received. And the answer is really, it depends on who the client is and what they need done, and how much, I don't want to say hand holding because that sounds minimizing, but sometimes you need a hand, right? So it really just depends. We have some clients that want us to stand there and look at everything with them, and they want to know, should I shred this? Should I not shred this? The shredding, we usually say, we use a shredding company that we really trust. And if you have doubts, put it in a bag labeled shred, add to it when the bag's full, you bring it to a shredder, right? That would be kind of like the easy kind of thing to do if it has like the business stuff on it, the accounts and stuff like that. And then other people, they just want advice. They want that kind of like bit of advice. What should I do with these things? Other people really want to say, I have all these things, tell me. So it really depends on how much information people need, and how many people can take some instruction and do their quote unquote homework. Some folks, when we leave, they don't want to really do anything. Do you want to talk about homework?
Homework is my favorite thing. I give every client homework. There's a lot of things like photographs and paperwork are the two worst things. And so, to answer your question, Michelle said it, it really depends on the client and what their needs are. Some clients, they just want us to do everything. They don't want to be involved. We'll take care of it. We'll make it look beautiful for you. Other clients, we do, as we're working together, we talk through it, we give them advice, suggestions. If I ever learn a trick, I share it with everybody. I want people to get organized with me and then continue the process on through life. I don't want you to just get organized to sell your home or whatever it is you're doing and that I did all the work. I want you to learn from it and I hope you carry it on. I lost my train of thought, sorry.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Sure.
I've been the wonderful recipient of Missy and Michelle, and I can tell you it was cathartic. And she was so sweet about, she'd lay 5 things out, so I didn't have to over focus. Of these 5 things, what do you need to keep? Became very clear. This one, not these. Boom. She'd come with another 5 things that she thought might be precious to me. Pick 3 of these. Oh, okay, this one, this one, this one. And having someone stand with you and say, when was the last time you used this or looked at this or needed this? And you kind of go, 5 years. So it's having a coach, it's having somebody right there with you. And so it becomes it helps connect the physical with the mental. And then you get in the groove. And what Claire said is at the first part of the process, you're not the same person that comes out the other end. And I really did learn how to be more organized. She taught me some tricks and I hear her voice and Michelle's voice in my head all the time saying, don't you dare put that back there,
Yes.
Regarding that, do you work from a records retention on things that might need to be kept for a lifetime? Like I think property sales and things like that. Do you work like with a CPA to have the proper
knowledge.
Retention, or do you just throw it all away?
No, actually, what I tell people is,
Oh, yeah, repeat the question, Missy.
the question was basically how long do you need to keep paperwork for? And so years ago, I went on to the internet and I went to the IRS and I just printed out what they suggested. So if you sell a business, you should hold on to that paperwork for 10 years. And if you've sold a property, 7 years, whatever it was. And I just printed it out and that's what I share. I try to go out and get some knowledge and then share it with my clients so that they feel confident about when to let things go and how long to keep it for. But I'm not a professional in that department, so they could easily ask their tax person what they suggest, but you can find all that information on the internet.
And, we're not going to force you to we can make suggestions, but we're not going to grab anything out of your hand and be like, no, you can't have it. Yes,
That
ma'am.
might be a good idea though.
Depends on the client. Yes, Sam.
For wedding gifts, we got a lot of china and a lot of silver plate and sterling silver. We find our kids don't want any of that. They're minimalists. They only want everyday stuff. And where do you get rid of it? Because, if you take it to a thrift shop or you take it, we've heard people say, no, we don't want it. A lot of shops, especially during the pandemic, when people were getting rid of things. And we found that the stores, the secondhand stores were overwhelmed. So what do we do with things that are really good, nice quality things to us, but
Herein lies the
nobody wants
problem.
Ooh. Oof, I don't want that one.
This is my favorite part. I have worked over the years to put together a really long, extensive list of charitable organizations in different areas so that wherever we're working, we have knowledge of where to take it to. And you're right, during COVID, it seemed like everybody was cleaning out their cupboards and closets, and a lot of these places just filled up, but they are accepting. And like Caroline's and Aptos, you guys don't know about, they're wonderful. I love them. You make an appointment, you bring in, they want your stuff. They really do. And there's a lot of other
Caroline's in
Oh,
Aptos.
Yes. And then I'm going to do my little spiel. I get all kinds of things that you would think you can't donate, and I can donate it. I have prosthetics that I have found a place that takes prosthetics. After somebody's gone through cancer treatment and they have wigs that they want to get rid of, I have a place I can ship that to. I have a very long, weird list of resources. So there are places out there. It just takes a little bit of work, but I've been working at it. So,
Well, and Missy, therein lies the breadth and depth of a professional, because as lay people, we don't know all those resources. And these guys know artists that maybe want to take the silver and make it into something, or they take old dressers and rehab them. So when you tap into their network, you find homes for things, so you feel better about them getting a second life. On your own, like Tom said, you're faced with Craigslist or some other risky proposition. So that's another added value for these guys that do this every day. They know where to find second homes for things.
I would just add to that, it's interesting to see people, it's important to them to find a home for their stuff, you know, a good home. They want to honor the stuff they had. But sometimes they don't want to pay for the help that it takes to
Find the home.
you know, honor that wish that they have. And, you know, so somehow people have to sort of get past that part of it. You know, if the stuff is really important that you get that china to the right place, well, so it should be worth some money to have help that allows you to do that. But a lot of times, you know, certainly my parents' generation, they didn't want to spend a dime on anything.
This goes kind of along with the lines that those of you who are here when we talked about taxes. If you have an unrealistic or an irrational attachment to not paying taxes, and you live a miserable life because you don't want to pay taxes and you stay in a house that's doing, it's the same kind of conceptual thing. You know, you deserve to have someone come and help you. You've earned, you know, you've been responsible, you've taken care of your house. It's time to make this big transition. You've earned the right to have somebody come and give you a hand, and it's worth a little bit of money to trade for some peace of mind. So if that's an obstacle, I would encourage you to look deeply into the risk reward ratio of struggling on your own for another couple of years, or spending a little bit of money to get some quality help and unpack that bag.
That was a great question. It is a problem because we might even, you know, our kids don't want it, then we think, well, it's of value. And then you find out, you know, these particular types of china are of value, or this is something that people are collecting now, but they weren't collecting it 5 years ago, and now it's going to change again. I think we go into this paralysis when we know that we're going to come up against some really hard feelings about our precious stuff not going to the right place or getting kicked around Goodwill. We think of that. I don't want to feel that feeling, but sometimes we're just going to feel those feelings, and that the next step is, I'm going to feel these feelings. I'm going to go into a lot of grief here. There's no way around it. But what do I do with that grief? How am I going to process this? And so know that we won't always be able to find the perfect home for your thing. We'll do the very, very best that we can, but sometimes it's just going to be so sad. In this part of life, there's a lot of sad stuff. And that's what I really, if wanted, like to help people with in my work, is just taking that time and making that space for people to cry. And we laugh a lot too, by the way.
And to accept that. Acceptance is the key to peace of mind. That's a great point Claire made. To accept that it is going to be sad, then you can embrace the sadness and say, okay, I was expecting this. Welcome sadness. I'm going to work through this, and I'm still going to come out the other side better organized. But a lot of it too is our self-concept gets in the way. Well, a good person or a good parent would never throw away their kids' second grade paperwork. And so if you identify that being a good person means you're going to keep elementary school fingerprints and pictures, you're going to struggle forever. So you might, that's where we talked about belief systems. Look deeply into your soul and say, I am a good person, and I am getting rid of this elementary school stuff. And that is freeing.
In those boxes of photos that are so hard to get rid of, the interesting thing is when you really start to look at it, you don't know who half of those people. They're probably friends of your parents or whomever, but you have no clue. But you're saving them because
I might remember.
yeah.
Yeah. And no matter how attached you are, you cannot take it with you. And that is just the reality too. Like it's not going with you. It's just not. Yes.
So, stuff has to leave, somebody has to carve it away. Do you guys help with that, or do you have contractors, or how does that work?
The SOS company will take away, usually on a daily basis, we take away what we can. Missy's got a big old truck and I have a very adequate Prius. But we do our best if they're donation items and we know we'll take away those things, and Missy kind of triages those at her house and then she'll distribute those as needed. And that's just kind of the system that we've worked out. Very large items, sometimes if it's furniture that maybe is going to the Restore or Habitat for Humanity or Salvation Army or something like that, we can help arrange pickups for larger items and stuff like that. Yes?
Just a comment and then a question.
Sure.
I saw a cartoon that said, the reason you can't take it with you is because you don't remember where you put it.
Yeah.
My question is I was wondering how you charge, how you determine your fees.
Repeat the question.
This fellow would like to know how we charge, what was our fee schedule. So the SOS company is on an hourly basis. And it just depends on how it works out and how much you need us. And maybe Claire can answer that for herself.
Absolutely. Every job I do is $75 an hour.
75 is that?
75.
And Michelle, how much is yours?
In county, in Santa Cruz County, we're comparable. We're 80.
And I can tell you from experience that the reverberations from the money you will spend will last. So every time I get a brew and it's right where I left it and I know where it is, that was the best money I ever spent. I have more self-esteem because when I go into my garage and my laundry products are like all right front row beautifully, I go, I am a good person. And I can thank Missy and Michelle for that self-accolation because I never would have done it on my own. I wouldn't have seen how to do it on my own. They have organizing skills that are way over the top. As she said, they're just instinctual in them and they're not in me, but I can maintain it. But it truly, that's pennies compared to the joy you will receive for being organized.
But if she starts to alphabetize the stuff in the pantry, I'm drawing the line.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I mostly work side by side with people. I don't necessarily pack people up to move, although I've done that. I mostly help people declutter and organize. And what was I going to say? Oh, so when I work side by side with that person, there's a synergy that happens, and you guys know what I'm talking about. So if you were doing that just on your own, think about the pace that you would be going at. It would be adequate, probably, maybe a little slower than you like.
Yeah.
Right. And then when one of us comes in, we get things moving. We crack a few jokes, we tell stories, we learn about your family history, you learn stories about me, and it becomes a very nice situation. It's not necessarily all pain. There's a lot of gain, and I've made many, many friendships, right? And it can be a very nice experience. And I've had lots of people say, Claire, you're worth every penny.
No doubt.
Yeah, thank you.
You've raised your hand a few times.
Rika.
So I was wondering if you partner up with people who do online estate sales. So what I'd like to do is have somebody, like everybody's got their opinion. You've already touched on it. This is valuable, Okay, so we emptied out my parents' house. I won't go into the weeds, but it was very painful.
Yeah.
But at the end, we got a guy who knew what he was doing. And he, in terms of estate sales and stuff, and he looked at all the stuff we had already, like, by then we were hauling it, you know, where's the dumpster? We're just throwing stuff away because it just got to be overwhelming. And he sold it all for us. He goes, well, you should have called me months ago.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, right? So I would like to have somebody just give me a reality check, but also facilitate selling stuff for me. If there is stuff, like I have a bunch of artwork that's all original and that type of thing. Is it worth something? Is it isn't? You know, that type of thing. Do you partner up with companies like that who can help you that way?
Honestly, that's not my profession. So what I tell people is to look at auction houses, and that's their profession. They know the value of things. They have a wide array of people that follow them and are looking for, they might look at your art and go, oh, I've got somebody who's going to buy that. That's their field. They're experts in that. I'm not. You don't want me selling your stuff. I don't know anything about stuff.
Right. I wasn't suggesting
Yeah.
you would do it. I was wondering if you partner with a.
I can
with
handle
Claire
it.
might have an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the client needed that and wanted me to execute that portion of it, I'm happy to meet with auctioneers and bring them in. But I personally don't do any of that kind of stuff.
I do work with a local company in town who does estate sales and will come in and do appraisals. And you can also have, you know, very highly regarded appraisers come into your home, you know, look at your watches, look at your jewelry, your book collection, your art,
That
and
helps
free of
with the
charge.
declutter too.
What's that?
That helps with the declutter. too.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're- Okay.
Oh, yeah.
My thing is keep, sell, donate, toss,
Mhm.
right? And I'd like somebody to help me with the sell
Yeah,
category.
yeah, someone you can trust.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It seems, when people say estate sales, it seems to me that they often mean like there's different kinds of levels of estate sales or auctions. You know, there's the Christie's auction house, you know, famous artwork and jewelry and things, but some people mean by that basically a glorified garage sale or a sale within your house where they come through and pick things out. So, you know, it's hard to, oftentimes people think their stuff is worth a lot more than it really is,
Yeah.
especially antiques. And if it's the higher end auctioneers or estate sale people, they're kind of like, you know, the charitable groups. They're only going to take what they can use, and they're in the business to make money.
Right.
So, you know, they'll cherry pick the stuff that's the best, and then you'll be left with the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, but that's even helpful.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's what that guy did. He went through the house and he had a truck, right? He brought he filled 3 trucks, and we were at the end. And the stuff he wanted, and then paid us like a contingency thing. So he took it all, and then he took a cut of it, and then gave us the other part. And it's super helpful. Like, we wish we had done it. We cleaned out their house for 5 years. We wish we had done it, you know, soon.
Mhm.
What's his name?
Yeah.
Back east.
You know, I think there's 3 parts to it. There's the intellectual, there's the grief over craft quality things that are no longer in vogue, and then there's the physicality of it. And so you kind of have to ask yourself, what's more important to me at this stage of my life? Being a curator of a lot of stuff and agonizing over the loss of, in some aspects of our life, crafts people. Do I want to be the banner carrier for craft and keep all the stuff in my garage and stay frozen? Or do I somehow dig deep and say to myself, there's other things I'd rather be doing, whether it's spending time with your grandkids or pursuing a hobby or taking a walk every day, without the psychological burden of knowing that a better person would clean out the garage, right? We live with that every day. To say to yourself, and that's very personal. Do you want to be the banner carrier for craft and keep it all? Or do you want to say, you know, the era I'm living in, this is just not happening, and I'm going to liberate myself. And that's what I think about when people have to alter their belief system. Because if you believe that a good person would honor this craft to the very end, that's fine, but then you're gonna be burdened with it if it is a burden to you to have all that stuff.
I just wanted to say quickly that we're talking a lot about things we're attached to. Think of all the stuff that we have that we're not attached to. Ay, 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 right? It's just like, where did this come from? Where did this all come from? How did this happen to me? Right? And so you will be amazed at how much lighter you feel if you have somebody else come in and just get it going.
They almost give you
Because-
permission.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
You know, because I know when I look at my stuff, I don't see it like another person sees it, right? And so all the time I'll walk into somebody's home, their garage, their business, and I'll point something out and they'll go, oh, okay, right. I didn't realize that was there, that was there, right? You get used to seeing it.
So why is it so hard to get rid of stuff that you're not attached to?
Because it's boring. There's so many more better things to do. It's daunting. It's hard work.
Or you don't have a place to, big enough receptacle.
Yeah, big enough receptacle. I mean, who really wants to do it? And then we come in and we don't care about your stuff. We see like, oh my God, I mean, that's an 80-year-old fishing rod, and that is a can of tenant. Yeah, it's worth something. I do want to point out that, and this might be your case too, that I've been in many situations where people do have things of value that they don't realize are valuable.
Right.
And I let them know.
Mm.
It's been really shocking. And so, a lot of people don't know what's being collected now that I might know. I'm no expert whatsoever, but it's really nice to save people that way.
The Pyrex dishes.
Yeah.
Well,
Everybody's bananas
Right.
about now.
For these guys, they're gonna know what's valuable in the culture more than you're gonna know independently. And so that's another benefit that they offer, is to say, hey, you may not be aware, but everybody's collecting these fishing creels. This is your lucky day.
So true.
Let's find that person. And the thing that you put so much value on is, no, there's no home for that. No repair, no new parts, and you're probably not gonna go fly fishing, so let's move on. So but some of the benefits of this is not just the face value of getting organized, it's helping organize your mind, find the right people to make these connections, knowing what's valuable. I mean, these are all the benefits that these three ladies bring.
And I think a big bonus for people is just doing that beautiful work of paying things forward. So many people don't want to give up something. And then when they start thinking in terms of who could benefit from this. And just one story that's actually a long story, but I'll make it really short. I worked for this one woman for years. And she was a perfect example of the sandwich generation, where she had all her parents' things and she had all her kids' things. She had lost a child. She had a living child, very many careers, very complex, big life, many homes, lots of stuff. And that's why we worked together for years. So I would go maybe twice, 3 times a month. And at first she was very, very reluctant, and it was very emotionally difficult, of course. And then one day I pull up and there is a stack of quilts outside of her garage. Beautiful quilts, not something you'd hang in a museum, but beautifully crafted quilts. And these were things that she was never going to get rid of. And I pulled up and she said, put these in your car right now. I'm ready. And I put them in my car and I went downtown that night. It was cold. And I walked around without the quilts and I approached homeless people and I'd say, do you need a blanket? And I used to work with homeless as a social worker, so it was a familiar territory for me. And, one guy said, well, how heavy is it? And I thought, what the heck? But it's like, yeah, they're carrying it around. Of course, that's a good question. And some people would say, no, I'm good. And then people who wanted them, I'd say, come on. We'd go to my car. They'd choose their quilt. So finally, I'm done. I've given away 15 quilts, beautiful quilts. And I'm walking back to my car and this man says, hey, have you seen the lady with the quilts? And I said, that's me. And I'm really sorry. I'm all out of the quilts. He said, you know what? I don't care. You have just rekindled my faith in humanity. I went back to my client's house the next day and I told her this story. She starts crying. She's realizing, I don't need all this stuff. Look at what you've done with my stuff. She says, get in the truck. I get in her truck. We drive to Target. She fills 2 baskets with blankets and pillows. And she doesn't ask. She says, tonight you go back down there and you do it again. And I did. I did. It's wonderful to pay it forward.
I was gonna
It's
say,
really lovely.
well, just, I think one of the important parts of that story is the shift. You come
Yes.
to a place where you shift. At an occasional time to selling smaller homes, and people would come to me and they would say, I just can't give up my big house.
Yeah.
And I had a gentleman who was so sweet. He would come every week and he'd look at these smaller homes, and it was in a age-specific community. He'd say, Terry, I don't know. I just can't sell my big house. And we'd talk for half an hour and he'd leave. This went on for like 4 weeks. And I said, what's the holdup? He said, well, I have this fabulous train set in my big house in Almaden, and I want my kids to have it, but they don't really want it. And it's a beautiful train set. I've worked on it all my life. And this went 6 weeks at least. One day he came in and he said, here's my check, let's do it. I said, Ross, what happened? What about the train set? He said, I gave it away. It's just a train set. He shifted like that and he was happy. And
Right.
it's a fascinating thing. Took months for him to come to that, but then that dawn happened very quickly. Right.
Do you think this shift or this letting go is easier if people know where their stuff is going to go, or if it's gonna go to a good home?
Yeah. I don't think it matters. I think they shift when they shift, but
I think everybody's different, and so it just depends. But I do have that experience with a lot of my clients that when they're like, oh, I don't want to get rid of this because who would want it? And if I tell them, oh, I actually have somebody who will want it, fantastic. And then it's like, awesome, put it in your truck, get it out of here. So I think it just depends on the person. You know, every client is totally different. But a lot of people do like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering about time frames for decluttering what you've got behind. And in particular, how do we know when we're done?
You're never done. The homework never ends.
Jackson Pollock said, when they asked him that question, the artist he said, how do you know when you're done? He said, how do you know when you're done making love? You just know.
To answer your question, we offer a free consultation appointment to all of our clients, and when we go in and we see the house, we see the project, we kind of give them a rough estimate of how long we think it will take. In my experience, it's approximately a week for every
Decade.
For every decade you've lived in the house. That's my rough estimate. You can go to some houses and it's going to be a lot longer, or it's going to go quick. What's that?
I have some from 2 houses ago.
You just keep adding on those decades.
Yeah.
Do you mean a week of you working constantly?
Yeah. Us working together.
Oh, no, I thought you had something you wanted to add about that.
That would not be the case for me. But I totally get what you're saying.
It's a benchmark.
Every job is so different. Some people aren't doing their whole house. Some people, one lady called me and she said, my niece called, she's coming to visit from Minnesota. Okay, I need to declutter my guest room. Great. I get there, just so we're doing one room. The whole room is Christmas boxes. Which is not unusual. Christmas is a big deal, right? But the whole room is Christmas boxes. So every job is really, really, really different.
We had once someone shared that they kept all their Christmas decorations, even though their entire family was 3,000 miles away. And we said, when was the last time they were here? 20 years. I said, what are you saving it for? She says, well, if I throw it away, it'll mean they won't come. And that was her belief system, that moment she parted with it, she was relinquishing the dream that they might someday come. And that is a big bit of ballast for a lot of people, accepting the conditions that they're with.
Right.
Any other questions? Don't be shy. This is your This is your chance.
You ladies have cards that you can.
Question was, do they have contacts? Yes, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to make themselves available. Somebody in the back?
You work out of like San Jose, which, you know, this is to.
Yeah,
Half garages will travel.
yeah, I worked all the way from the city down to Carmel.
We've actually worked out of state, so.
Yeah,
We'll
I've
go
actually
anywhere.
worked out of country.
And you're doing this, the one thing I'd like for you to hold in the center, foremost in your mind is, of all the things you've heard, is why am I holding on to what I'm holding on to? What would be the benefit of liberating myself from some of these things? And why do I resist hiring a professional to get me over the finish line and be at peace? And when you can answer those questions for yourself, you'll be halfway to the finish line. But those are the three holdups. I don't need any help. Yes, you do. I can let go of some of this stuff. Yes, you can. And how much better are you going to feel after you do it? And as they have said, with 100% success, everyone's like, why did I do this sooner? I feel so good.
In preparing for this, I had asked Missy in the years that she's been doing it a lot longer. I said, how many times have you got a call from somebody who said, why did you make me get rid of, or I really miss my X, Y, or Z?
Never.
And she said once, but the story is a lot more interesting. She told the story, and I said, well, that's the other side of the story. So I'm going to let Missy tell the China story.
So I helped this woman who had a box of china in a cupboard in her garage. It was her grandmother's china, and she had never used it. Her mom made her take it when she moved out of the house, went into this cupboard. It wasn't her style. She didn't like it. She finally was ready to let it go. And I had actually helped find a buyer for her. Fast forward about a year and a half, and she's at dinner at a restaurant locally, and in front of her is her china.
Oh my gosh.
Really? Yep. She was a little sad. She was like, oh, no, it's
That's
beautiful.
wild.
I love looking at it. It's so pretty. But it finally had a life.
Yes.
It left that cupboard, so now it was alive again. I really think that's the only reason she wanted it back.
Beautiful.
Like, there was no day from that
That's
year and a half.
beautiful.
Right.
So
That's
that's
great.
just a reminder that your stuff can keep
Live
living.
on.
Yeah.
Unlike us.
Mention a shredding company you especially recommend,
Yes, Santa Cruz Records Management.
Yeah.
I absolutely love them.
Santa
can
Cruz
see it, though,
Record
yeah.
Management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a drive-through facility. You pull up, pop your trunk, he'll take it out, they weigh it. Their prices are totally fair, and they will put it on the conveyor belt and shred it right in front of you. I have never had any issue with their services.
Where is it?
It's.
Rodeo Gulch, isn't
It
it?
dead ends, at the freeway, Rodeo Gulch.
Research Drive.
Is that what it is?
Research Drive.
Oh, it is, okay.
What is it called?
Santa Cruz Records Management. It would be technically Santa Cruz.
You can just Google it.
Yeah.
I think it's one street next to where Gray Bears and Sutter is. I think it's the next street.
It's a little further up,
Research Park Drive
everybody
where
remember
camp
Sweets in
is.
the Mood?
Just Google
Go
it.
down that street until you hit the freeway and it dead ends at it.
Oil Can Henry's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
so the other side, yeah.
You're the Honda dealership also.
Yeah.
In the far back has had her hand up for a while.
Oh, ma'am?
Just, before you wind it up, could you all give us your telephone numbers and or email?
All of our business cards are at the table at the front, and there's even we made up a flyer for you all so you can kind of get a little rough estimate of our services, but we all put our cards up there with our numbers and our websites and emails and everything, so you can reach us.
We also have a handout of people that we've worked with, moving companies, haulers, organizers, packers, kind of the whole gamut. And I'm not sure is that list back there, Natasha?
Yes.
Yeah, back there. And you're welcome. We're going to be updating that list as we go, adding new people. And we don't like to put people on the list that we haven't worked with before. But if you're interested, you can take that list.
if you want to kind of get a regular update on that, just let me know and I'm happy to put you on the Google Drive report.
Tom, is it time to do the raffle?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
There's a couple questions
Okay,
there.
okay. Hi.
I just wanted to share something that helped me with dishes. We always refer to my mom as the dish queen, and my sister and I were the dish princesses, and we have sets and sets and sets. And my sister decided she was going to try and sell sets. People don't want sets, they want pieces. And if you're willing to let go of pieces, you know, they move. The second thing was, I got caught in this all or nothing thing, which is I have to keep the whole set or I have to get rid of it and I'm immobilized. So I just kept a cup and saucer. So my cupboard is full of one
Nice.
cup and saucer from all these different sets.
Love
And
it.
it brings me great joy to drink different days coffee at that one cup and saucer.
That's great.
It's a nice idea.
Her story is a good one. It's about, she was the dish queen, her mother was the dish queen, and she and her sister were the dish princesses, and they acquired far too much cutlery in China. So rather than feel like she had to sell the entire set or give it away to someone, she broke it into pieces. So by giving a plate or two plates to people that maybe just a husband and wife, by breaking the sets up, everything got a second life. So it wasn't all or nothing. And she kept a cup and saucer from each set that she liked. And so that's that's a mental construct that's super helpful to think of it that way, because we get
Really
stuck in our belief systems. I can't break up a set of China. I can't break up a set of China. I can't, and then, but you can. There's no China police. They're not.
Police in China.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share, both my parents died in the last year and a half. They were married for 68 years.
Congratulations. They were winners.
And my sister and I went through every single thing shoulder to shoulder. And I just want to encourage you all who are thinking of not leaving all your stuff for your children to go through. That would be really great. It was hard and it was sad, like what Clara said, there was a lot of attachment to things, which we worked through. After we had family choose things, we hired a estate sale person who we paid a flat fee, and she had her estate sale starting with the people on her list that already subscribed to her business. And the deal was, what she doesn't sell, she donated, and we got the house empty.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's
Yeah.
great.
Which was worth a lot. I think we made $88 on the sale, but yeah, the house was empty.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It was empty. Yeah.
Sometimes the money you actually make is the money you've saved by not having to
Right.
hire people at the end to
Right.
come and move it and haul it away. There. Awesome.
Do any of you, have you ever, my mother was much neater than me and very well organized, and she had a wonderful cleaning lady that came and dealt with her house. But when it was ever getting ready for the cleaning lady to come, the house had to be all straightened up and there was, you had to have a cleaning lady. Have you ever noticed that, like, if you give people a month's notice that you'll be there in a month, they just do all sorts of stuff to finally get off their ass?
You wouldn't know, would you?
No. 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 And keep in mind that a lot of people, and maybe this is your case as well, that hire me, and this is not the majority, but a lot are ill, elderly, they're in grief, they've just lost somebody, maybe someone's died in their home, right? Lost children, just terrible, terrible things are going on or have gone on. And so they just need help, period.
If you're not in that category, which lots of people who have too much stuff probably are not.
I think it's the thing about you
Just
don't.
wonder if it would light a fire under people.
No, because you
It
don't know.
doesn't.
If you knew how to do it and you had that personality, you'd be
It's like
doing
a
it.
farmer.
And
I know how to be a better farmer, I just haven't done it.
Right, right.
Another category of customers, clients that we often have are people who are just too busy.
Yeah.
They have very active lives. They have a lot of family. They do a ton of stuff. These people may or may not have their own good, sound organizational instincts, but they just would never find the time or make the time to do it. So there's also that where, and even people who are kind of ashamed that they have to bring us in, or ashamed of the condition of their home, or there's a lot of folks who get very like bashful and apologetic, and that's another one that you probably also share. It's like, you're bringing us in, we've seen it all, it's not worse than anything we've seen, and we're not coming in there to judge. You're not gonna pay us to judge you. We would never survive, right? So there's no judgment. You know, it is what it is. If everybody was perfectly organized and capable, or had the time to sit around and organize their whatever, then we wouldn't have a job. And so I would just remind you all that everybody's sort of in the same boat. Everybody's got, my utility room, I hate it. It's always a mess. And I'm an organizer, so you know, it's not great advertising, but it is my utility room and I hate it. You know? I should hire some. I actually tried to get you and Matt to come clean it. They won't. But the reality is, like, you know, not everybody is capable or has the time or could physically get around to it, or mentally. So everybody's got something that precludes them from having that perfectly organized, perfectly purged environment that they think that they need or aspire to have, or need to eventually acquire.
A lot of people who call also have ADHD or ADD. So they want to do it. They have the time, they have the energy. They just don't know how.
There was somebody at the back had a question. Yes.
What can you advise us about pictures? You know, today, everybody's got an iPhone and they're accumulating hundreds and thousands of pictures, typically unlabeled. In some cases, we have pictures though that go way back several generations, black and white.
Yes.
So people I've never known, but it tells us and our kids, you know, if our relatives are fat or thin or whatever, you know, and once they're destroyed, you can never replace them.
Yes.
So could you address two things, I guess? One is these very old pictures, and the other is the more recent stuff that's accumulated so quickly, which people tend to not filter out in their iPhone, along with a lot of data sets too.
Right.
Digital things.
Well, I just worked on an estate where we digitized every single family photo. It took days. And then the matriarch of the family told us who was in each photo to the best of her ability, and that was jotted down. And then we sent it to a service. This was in Canada, by the way, so I don't know if we have it here, but we sent it to a service that not only put it all together so that the whole family could share it, but the names and the dates were also on it.
Wow.
And maybe Bay Photo does it, Terry.
I know they did put things on a disc when discs were a thing, so they're
Yeah,
pretty.
I know they do the photos. I don't know about the names. Do they do the names too?
I don't know if they name them or not.
Yeah. And then the recent photos, that's a matter of time where you just get things into files and then you can name the files. And then you could put notes in the files. So, you know, picture one, Uncle Bob, Aunt Jaja, and dog Gigi, you know, 1972 at the cabin, that kind of thing. So it's just putting a lot of time and effort into it. That's the best that I can give you on that.
Would you recommend?
I'm sorry, just building on that real quick. We knew somebody who did that, and they loaded it up on Ancestry.
Oh, nice.
So you went to all that trouble, and somebody goes, well, why don't you just put it on Ancestry? And you can hold the pictures up there.
Yeah.
And that's a real legacy.
It's great. Just
Yeah.
getting the names that we want to do.
I was just gonna say, I hate to argue towards saving things, but if you digitize things, you have to be careful about as the technology changes to be sure it can still be read. My cousin had an experience where she had her father's photos, he was a photographer, all organized, and as the technology changed, it was hard to read the format it was on. So you have to keep track.
Good point.
And this one advantage of hard copies. So really important documents have a digital copy, but keep the hard copy too, like, you know.
Get it in the cloud. Yeah, good point.
So the comment was to keep up with the technology. If you choose to digitize your photos or your important documents, to make sure that you don't let so much time pass that now that format is no longer compatible.
One thing if you've got a lot of stuff that you're struggling with, what I tell people is don't start with the photos. Because, you know, you could, that's one of the things that will exhaust you very quickly. You're better off starting with easy stuff first, or bigger stuff where you can start to see things disappear, space open up. And when that space starts to open up, the other stuff becomes a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And worst case scenario, if you're downsizing to a assisted living or to a smaller place, if you have to store something or bring it to your new place, that's relatively small size and easy to carry. So don't necessarily start with that.
Yeah. I also recommend when you're working with fussy stuff, paperwork and such, if you're a person who sits around at night and watches Netflix or that kind of thing, it's great. When it's something you don't have to have your eyes on all the time, you're listening to it, you can look up every once in a while. Get your papers out then. Get your photos out then. And just take your time. Start now. 10 minutes. And then if you feel like more, 15 minutes. And you feel like more the next night, 20 minutes. But just, start now, start slowly, and you're just going to build up and see that it's possible. It's just like the pool when it's cold. Just jump in and start moving.
I think we talked about this, that you can never feel your way into acting. You have to act your way into feeling.
Yeah.
So you will never feel like doing this.
Right.
So if you're waiting for the day to feel like it,
Right.
that day is never going to come.
Make it
But Claire's advice is great. Say, tonight I'll spend 15 minutes. That's all. And then you make that small commitment to yourself, which feels very doable. And once that 15 minutes has started, you'll find that you're 2 hours later, you're still going through the photos. But you act your way into the feeling. Don't wait for the feeling to come, because it doesn't come. Yes.
This segment, what are your top 3 strategies for dealing with paper?
Which is with paper? Top 3 strategies? Oh boy, well,
Start.
Start. It really, I love your question, and I don't mean to avoid it, but it really does depend on the job. But just start touching it, start categorizing it, figuring out what you truly do need, what do you need to keep for how many years. Figuring out the best way to store it so you don't lose it. Now that is really complicated. Some people are stackers, right? And they can actually find things in the stacks, but some people can't. Then some people get the thing where you slot it on an angle and slot it this way and then slot it on the wall. You just kind of have to figure out what works. What I have found out is almost nothing works. No, really, almost nothing works. We all need assistance to do this stuff. People will hold up a piece of paper and say, what do I do with this? And it's like, okay, let's look at it. Okay, you do need it. Make a file for it. Make a file for it. It needs a home. It needs a home. What are you going to do? Leave it on your desk all the time? Leave it by the phone? It needs somewhere to live. So you put on it, grocery boy or whatever it is. I gave him this tip. If you need to keep it, that was a bad example. But find a home for it. Find a home for the paper. Get rid of it. Yeah, Marjorie.
So we stand at the open door of our storage and go, oh no. Where do we start? And we can't figure out. One day we'll start with, let's go and take everything that we're going to throw out. No. Let's start with everything that we're going to sell. So we just take the door and leave.
Yeah.
What's your strategy for when we get to something like that?
Yeah, what I often do with people in storage lockers is pull everything out and find out what you don't want anymore. Then read, and you will find things that you do not need. Why did I keep this? Why did I keep that? Oh, there that is. I've been needing that. You take it home, right?
Yeah.
But get rid of everything you don't need. I like to do this wherever I declutter. Get rid of it, get it rid. Once you know what you have, then you know how much there is of it, how big of a box you need, if you even need a box. And then you start to you front load what you might want to grab, when you're going to the lake, or you back load stuff that you never even want to touch ever, but you want your kids to have it. So, right? I mean, we're keeping I'm keeping stuff for my kids, right? So have things accessible that you want to touch, but first of all, get rid of the stuff you don't need, categorize it, sell stuff off. But get it out, you really devote a lot of time to just taking it all out at once, because it sounds like you're not really getting anywhere by just taking out a little at a time.
There's another piece to the other,
Yeah.
but Missy and Michelle weigh in on this too, but
Yeah,
one of the other questions to ask yourself is what in there is worth spending $200 a month that possibly you could buy when you actually needed it for 79 cents at the dollar store. So when you go through there, you want to think about that. You're like, oh my gosh, I've been paying $200 a month to store things that I don't need, that if I actually did need that cheese grater, I could go get one for cheaper than $200 a month. If you put that $200 a month in a piggy bank, I guarantee you could buy almost everything that's in your stores, and so that's another reframing.
it's so true. That is a really good point.
So for the storage unit thing, my suggestion would be to set yourself up for a successful project. Plan a day, say you're going to do it, go down there, bring a table with you so you have a work surface, bring bags, boxes, bins so you can label one donation items, things I want to keep, things I'm not sure about. I always tell my clients it's okay to have a maybe pile. We'll address it later. So it will help you grab that first box, set it on the table so you feel comfortable, bring a stool if you need to. But just walking up to it and opening it up, it's daunting. It's like, I don't want to do this. It's easy to shut it. But if you say, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to stay for 4 hours. That 4 hours after a little while maybe isn't so bad. And you stay for 4.5. And then you're like, okay, I did a good job. I'm going to come back in a couple more days, do it again. Do the exact same thing. Bring your table, your chair, bring your little bins so you're organized, and just chisel away at it. That's how I work with clients. We do the same thing. We just chisel away at it. Start with things that are a little easier. If you open up a box, you're like, oh, this was mom's stuff. This is going to be painful. Set it aside. Do it later.
That's right.
Hit the easy stuff first. You'll make a big dent, and then all you have is the hard stuff at the end, and you've already gone through this big process. It might actually be a lot easier by then. So most of our clients kind of progress, like what Terry was talking about. First day is really hard, last day is super easy. So just chisel away.
So it sounds like there's this trend of declutterification.
It's a way to put it.
Maybe.
I have a question, you must run into situations where there's sort of disagreement between the spouses or the partners. Partners.
You bring this up at 8:30?
Gotta go home, right? I mean, how do you handle that? What do you do? Do you end up being mediators?
We handle it gently, but we actually have spouses that hire us when other spouses are out of town.
Oh, absolutely.
It happens a lot. Sometimes there's just a spouse that is more of the saver. They collect things, they save things, and the other one's like, it's gotta go. We try to just play middleman. Like, okay, you want everything to go, they want to keep everything, let's try to work down the middle. And it usually works. We've never had an issue where the one spouse is like, you have to leave, get out, I'm not getting rid of anything. They usually work together because by the time they've called us, they're looking for that middle ground. And that's what we do.
Yeah, it's true that sometimes one client will call us in and say, okay, this is my stuff. Don't touch his stuff. He's not on board yet. And then what will often happen is we'll say work with one spouse and we'll make a lot of progress, or that the reluctant spouse will see how we work, or that, you know, it's not so bad, or some version of that it's that the process is actually less painful than they anticipated. And so by the end, maybe we're moving into their territory as well. They come around. Yeah. So it does depend. But when you're talking about individual items, that can be a little tricky. So sometimes you just have to say, well, that's your homework, is to work it out.
Rochambeau for it.
Yeah. Arm wrestle for it.
Yeah. It happens all the time. And right, you just have to stay neutral and maybe sometimes give some counseling advice in whatever way seems appropriate. And it could be super helpful for people to reframe what's going on. The stressors are huge. We're all really, really stressed out. And it's so easy to blame one another. I do want to say one thing, if you don't mind. I worked for this couple over the hill. They've probably been married 55, 60 years. Had 4 kids, raised in this house. They moved in this house in 1967. And he was convinced that everything was hers. And he had a lot of stuff. His stuff was, in his words, very practical. You know, so a lot of tools and a lot of things for fixing stuff around the house, you know, that wasn't like handyman stuff, but gardening stuff. And, oh, you know, his office was filled with things. She had sewing stuff and kitchen stuff. He could only see what she had. Anyways, what was really interesting was, after all this blaming that was going on, they showed me this room. They said, this is a room we don't really go into.
Was it neat?
And I said, well, whose is it? And they said, it's ours. And I went in it. So cool. It was a room that they had never unboxed since the 60s when they moved into this house. So it was this huge cube of boxes, beautifully aligned, very old. And then you could walk all around the boxes, and they had never opened them. So it was just like this neutral, odd place where it was like she couldn't blame him, he couldn't blame her. And we started to open the box. I wish I could have been there. I only got to be there for like 2 boxes, but it was like the Smithsonian. I mean, it was just like, oh, remember when they used to make blah, blah, blah? Just so many cool items. But it was fascinating. Yeah, a lot of conflict. But I have a lot of tools for that.
One of the things we find in talking to people is that the husband and the wife have misconceptions about their partner. And that is a really healthy thing when that comes to light. The wife will share with us, oh, well, he thinks this, this, and this. And the husband will say, well, she thinks this, 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 this. And then we know that's not correct. They're laboring under these old archetypes of their personality of their spouse. And that's liberating in and of itself, to take a new look at this person and say, oh, okay, you shed that skin, you've evolved into somebody different. I just failed to notice. And that sometimes comes out, and that's another form of liberation, when you don't see your spouse through the same lens that you've seen them, when you see, oh my gosh, you've changed, you've become someone new. And I appreciate that.
One other thing, coming to terms with, this last third is the sentiments there where you don't want to leave that burden for your kids. Well, statistically, it's likely that, one partner or one spouse is going to pass before the other. So if we're sure we don't want to leave it for our kids, well, do we want to leave it to our partner, our spouse? And, so I encourage all of us to think that way. We're at 8:30. Great questions. Yeah, I just, it's clearly these guys know their stuff. I mean, I just think back, I mean, what chance do we have with stuff? What, I mean, it's everywhere. We grew up, we've all got the hunter-gatherer gene, right? We never got, there is no gene for ignore and disperse. It doesn't exist. And it kind of went sideways when the hunter-gatherers, it was great because if they were migrating from home to home to home, they only kept what they could carry. Right, but then
The rest of it biodegraded.
right, yeah, exactly. And then the agrarian civilization started, and suddenly we had permanent homes. So they weren't carrying it, so that was an encouragement to gather more. And the Egyptians and other cultures came up with the idea that you could be buried with your stuff, and you could take it with you. So the pharaoh always went to the afterlife with his cats and his dogs and every bit of stuff he had. And we had the Industrial Revolution, the invention of the printing press, and and then a funny thing happened right after World War II, and that's which is when we were all born, and we launched into the greatest economic expansion the world has ever known. And at the same time, we got credit cards were invented. Television was invented, right? The average size of a house physically doubled, and suddenly we had more room to put our stuff, right? Then it was in the late 60s, early 70s that the storage units came into play, right? And now we have
Pods.
we have Amazon, and we can get stuff. You pay a little bit more, but you can get it in a couple hours. So it's everywhere, and it's particularly our generation because it's different than any other generation before. So much stuff, so little time. Was this helpful?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Well, it was more of a comment. We've kind of gotten started, but what it took is that we brought somebody in to do a deep cleaning of our house. And so, I mean, they went through everything in the cabinets, the kitchen, I mean, everything. Moved the stove, moved the refrigerator. And so we kind of are in this position where we want to mess this up. And so there's a room that I've been ignoring because I used to have an art studio. I closed it down and moved a lot of the stuff into one of these bedrooms we have. Got 3 bedrooms. And then got a small storage. So stuff's between, I don't know where to start. She said, just go in that room. So I was in that room that day until that night.
Wow.
And so it's starting to make a difference. And it's interesting that that's what it took for us to get started.
Yeah, that is
And of course,
interesting.
these workshops we've been doing have been really helpful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Good.
Does everybody have a raffle ticket?
Everybody got the raffle ticket? Okay, good. Well, tonight's first prize is going to be, they're already
Oh, they're all done.
here.
Oh, I see, they're busy.
So
How
we
fun.
selected them randomly, and they're each, there's one ticket in each of these beautiful colored squares when I spin the big wheel. And the first prize is going to be
Oh, do you want this, Tom?
an introductory session with Missy. The second prize is going to be an introductory session with Michelle, and the third's going to be an introductory session with Claire. And we purchased gift certificates that we'd like to award the 3 lucky
How fun.
people. So it's a good, if you win it as a prize, it doesn't, you don't have to feel so guilty about calling the organizer to come and help you. You kind of have to take advantage of it.
Now
Okay,
you feel guilty if you don't call.
right.
Yeah, right.
All right,
As
so
long as
we're-
there's
here's the
guns.
first spin. Ready? All right. Okay, we've got 03654298.
Can you read the name on the back also?
It is.
Maybe not.
There is no name on the back.
She's right there.
Oh, okay, great.
Yay.
Can you see us after? Yeah. Okay. Spin number 2.
So this is with Michelle.
Yes.
Okay.
This is 03654301.
36543. Oh, that would be me.
Okay.
Yay.
All right. Now the third spin. All right. This is fun.
Yeah, it is.
We've got 03654308. Oh, yeah, the lucky lady in the back. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope it's been helpful. We're gonna take a little bit of a break here, and then we've got a new granddaughter, and we're spending more time with her. But we'll be coming back again. I mean, there's more to talk about relative to downsizing. If you're interested or you think it's valuable, just let me know, and we'll plan some future. There's a lot more topics to talk about that are part of this. But thanks for coming. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I know, it is fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's engagement. You get to get feedback, you know.
Such an interesting.
Thank you